that starts to displace the salt water. So we have these plumes of sweet water moving up that way and down that way. And that allows us to gradually, by pumping sweet water in or fresh water and then pumping out successively, we can gradually sweeten the water. So if we pump in, let's say, 30 megalitres of sweet water in, we might be able to get about 15 megalitres of that sweet water back again. So it's quite a good return. Now, to give you an idea of cost comparisons, we installed a 3 megalitre underground storage tank close to the Melbourne markets, and that cost us $3 million. This is a 30 megalitre equivalent storage tank, roughly, and it only costs us less than $1 million. So, and also it doesn't affect amenity because obviously the tank is, the aquifer is beneath us. So that's why there's a lot of interest in using aquifers. In Ballarat, they potentially have an aquifer which has got the potential for 1.5 gigalitres of storage capacity. And aquifers are used extensively in Perth and also in South Australia for water storage. And they can be used for anything from treated stormwater as a source of water to recycled water as well. So you can even get recycled water and pump it in there. The purpose for this particular aquifer is to eventually irrigate some sports fields which are planned to be built just over the hills over there. So normally when we look at estates, we look at in a broader context. We look at transportation. We look at future sports fields. We look at water treatment options, and we look at them as a whole, so we can better place a few things together. So obviously, it makes sense to plan to build a sports field close where you've got a water source, particularly as we're going through, droughts, or we can anticipate droughts. So the aquifer, typically we can pump out around about 5 litres per second, and that correlates to about half a megalitre per day. We'd try to, if we were irrigating sports fields, we would have a tank, perhaps a 3 megalitre tank close to, or a 1 megalitre tank close to where the sports grounds are, so we can pump water up there, hold it until we need it as well. Does anyone have any questions about aquifers in general? Oh, really? If you look over there, you'll see a sort of a white PVC pipe just before the fence, and we've got some, I think over, I can't see there, we might have there. Next to that fence there you can see a green cone. It depends on your perspective, but just next to the fence there's a green cone, so it looks squat like that. There's a whole bunch of them along here. They each have bores, so the main bore for the aquifer is just there. That's where we have the pump. The pump is actually inserted down into the bore itself, 40 metres underground, and it can pump the water up. But each of those stations there also has a bore drilled into it, and we can monitor the water level and also the salinity. So we can get an idea of when we're pumping the water in, where the plume is going. So remember, it's salt water which is being displaced by the fresh water. We also get a better idea of how large, and we do a lot of modelling to understand, as you pump water in, pump water out, we can analyse for temperature, pH, conductivity, and even dissolved oxygen. We get an idea of the performance of the aquifer. So there's a lot of science behind it, a lot of consultancy companies which get involved in aquifer management too. In this is the pumping station. We'll have, we've got one pump which is in the wetlands that pumps the stormwater into the aquifer. In this station here we've got filters to filter out any sediment. We've also got the same sort of monitoring equipment, temperature, pH, conductivity, and dissolved oxygen. Anyone have any questions? And the only other thing with the aquifers, they're not like just a normal storage tank where you can just pump water in, pump water out. You have to be very careful. So typically if we have a rainfall event, we'll do some monitoring and wait for sediment levels to come down, because whenever we have a rainfall event here, because all the development, we end up with a lot of sediment in the water, or turbidity, we have to wait till that settles, and only then can we pump. Every day in the early evening we pump out of the aquifer, and again that prevents blinding. So if you don't use the aquifer, you tend to lose it as well. So it has to be actively managed. It's automated obviously, but it's still a big task. Any questions? We might go over to wetlands now and have a look. So we're going to have to brave the dogs again. And in fact, where you can see the dogs playing around the water, that's aquifer water. So it would have been water pumped off. Actually today it may not be, but historically it's aquifer water. It sort of collects there and eventually goes to wetlands.
Oh yeah. And then like me, yeah, go.
Placards now. It's the placard time. And, yeah, I might use the duck signs. This is okay, we're back. Whoops. I wonder if it's better if I put it around. Catch it. I'll try this. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Testing, testing. Okay. Is that better?
Actually touch the board that it's split.
Okay. Okay. So this is the Mernda wetlands now. It's a 600 hectare catchment. 400 hectares is rural, so we still have active rural where we've got cattle grazing on properties, and then it goes to about 200 hectares which is being developed. 30 hectares is the Mernda central village that you would have gone through. The water collected from that catchment goes through a GPT, a gross pollutant trap, and then goes through a series of goes through a sedimentation pond, and then you'll see a little bit later because we'll go for a walk. Goes through another sort of pond area, and then into this main catchment here. Eventually, at the very end, far just around the corner, it's released into the Plenty River. It's funny about the ducks here. So one of the reasons why we're here is we had an incident. We had an incident at one of our other lakes, Botanica Park. We had an outbreak of avian botulism. So avian botulism is a bacteria which exists naturally, but if you've got a situation where we've got high temperatures, low water inflows, and a lot of organic material, you can end up with the release or production of the toxin. So we had 30 ducks die, and we had a lake similar size to this, probably just a fraction bigger, with 200 ducks. And it's not uncommon for some of our even rain gardens as well to have 200 plus ducks on them, simply because they're in residential areas. Remember when we do the I'm not sure if you've heard of well, we do modelling obviously when we want to calculate how much rain garden to have for a treatment option. But none of those models, the music models, take into account ducks and feeding ducks. So we ended up with a situation where we had 200 ducks and ducks started to die, then fish started to die as well. And we did the investigations. There was nothing we could do except for fencing off the wetland and advising people obviously not to feed the ducks. So we came up, we had all these signs. So we're going to be doing some experiments to see if we can change the long-term education views or behaviours of people around ducks. Because as you can see, we've all grown up feeding ducks, so it's a situation which, you know, behaviour which is hard to change. Also, you may not, I'll just grab this one as well. We do a lot of work in schools, so most of my work is probably about 70% of my time is in schools, mostly primary schools. I teach coding and environmental sensing. So now we're building a sensor for the Plenty River. We've got some beautiful platypus which live in the Plenty River, and we know they're there from observations from people, but also from eDNA samples. So eDNA samples tell us that there's recently been platypus there, or at least they're present. So we had, because of urban development, a lot of factories in the area. We know some factories which are notorious for polluting their local waterways. So what we do now is, with help of schools and library, we build sensors which are solar powered, which we can put in tributaries. They measure things like temperature, conductivity, pH. If every day they send approximately 3 readings, and if one of those readings is out of whack, or if we get a report from a resident, we can go and investigate. I didn't bring my other sign, but the other sign looks a little bit like this. So this is one part of it. You can see what the sensor sort of roughly looks at. It will have solar panels and sensors placed underneath in the water. And we build those now. You've probably heard of the Maker movement. So the Maker movement involves electronics, 3D printers, technology like that. It's very easy to build and buy sensing equipment. So pH probes, etc. you can buy for about $100. We use little microcontrollers. This is a BBC microbit, and we code it in Python. So Python is a very common language. Have you heard of a Raspberry Pi? No, a Raspberry Pi is another computer which we use, and again we take into schools. I'll just get from my bag. So we're very much into a maker culture. So this is a conductivity probe from Atlas Scientific. You just buy these. This is a Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi is a fully fledged computer running Linux. It costs only $65. And we build the computer labs in schools using electronic waste. So it's amazing what you can do these days. The main language which we use is Python, and one of the reasons why we use Python as well is because it interfaces really well with GIS systems, so geographical information systems. So we can now, by doing modelling in GIS systems, we can predict flooding, instances of flooding with the municipality. So 2 years ago we had a large flooding incident in Lalor. Yeah, Lalor. Now we can, using GIS systems, we've got inflows of water, we've got rainfall, and rainfall patterns are changing, probably due to climate change. Now we can start modelling floods, or the likelihood of floods within urban development. And obviously, as we get more and more urban development, the amount of runoff coming down through the municipality is greater, and that also affects runoff getting into Darebin as well. So municipalities which are further downstream. Does anyone have any questions in relation to these sort of activities? So I just want to encourage you to, obviously, with the environmental space, there's we've found that certainly doing coding in schools and engaging schools in water quality sensing using non-traditional methods is quite effective as well. Should we go for a walk down that way? It is rainy. I hope you're not all cold. It's about 3:15. Do we have 15 minutes? We'll go for a walk, or what's the best?
10 minutes to go for a walk and 5 minutes to get back on the bus or something like that. Yeah.
Is it okay? It is rainy, but I don't mind walking. Yeah. It's wash day today, isn't it? Laundry day.
我真係好介意啊！